If you've ever felt a sudden, inexplicable drain of energy and then notice something move just at the edge of your vision, you might be in the exact moment your third eye is beginning to open. That line in your perception where things usually blur, shadows, shimmer, a half-seen shape, can be the first trace of a new kind of sight. I'm going to explain where this idea comes from, why it might be happening to you now, and give you a safe, practical way to train that peripheral awareness so you can see clearly without fear. At the end, I'll walk you through a short exercise you can try tonight for 7 to 10 minutes. If this sounds familiar, type visible in the comments so you and others who are noticing the same things can find each other. Some of the background you should know comes from a set of texts discovered in the mid-20th century near Nag Hammadi in Egypt. These writings, some of them attributed to early Christian communities outside the mainstream, offer an alternative reading of spiritual practice and perception. The Gospel of Mary Magdalene, along with other Gnostic fragments, contains passages and themes suggesting that certain teachers demonstrated ways to expand perception beyond ordinary sight. According to these Gnostic accounts, there were methods taught to select students to recognize layers of reality that usually go unnoticed. I want to be clear, these are alternative sources and not part of the canonical gospel tradition most people were raised with. When I say Jesus is said to have taught or the Gnostic texts describe, I'm pointing to what these particular writings assert, not declaring a universal historical fact. Treat these as a tradition that claims a practice existed, one that many contemporary seekers and practitioners have found useful for the perception work I'll describe. Why does this matter now? Because across cultures and traditions there is a recurring claim. Certain invisible agents, called archontes in Gnostic vocabulary, operate by remaining unseen. The word archontes can be translated roughly as rulers or guards, but in these texts it refers to subtle, often invisible forces that interfere with clarity of perception and can feed from unguarded attention, fear, or habitual reactivity. In modern terms, imagine influences that prefer anonymity. They alter moods, plant intrusive thoughts, or create small drains of energy so that your attention becomes a steady food source. They're subtle. They don't need dramatic possession stories to be effective. A whispered doubt, a recurring low mood, a niggling distraction is enough. You've probably had experiences that line up with this. A sudden wave of fatigue in the middle of your day that disappears as suddenly as it arrived. A mood dip that isn't tied to any event. Intrusive negative thoughts that feel out of character. The uncanny sense of being watched, or catching movement in your peripheral vision that vanishes when you look directly.
Those are the everyday signals many describe as precursors to an opening of perceptual capacities. They're often dismissed by our modern habits. It was just my eyes. Or I must be tired. But when they cluster, they can mean your nervous system is recalibrating and inviting a deeper kind of attention. To understand how perception can be trained, it helps to touch on the mechanics of vision. Human sight isn't a single, all-seeing beam. It's a coordination of central and peripheral systems. Your central vision is sharp, focused, and excellent at detail. It's what reads faces, text, and precise shapes. Your peripheral vision is broad, motion-sensitive, and tuned to changes in light, shadow, and movement across the field. The brain applies a filtering process so you aren't overwhelmed by everything at once. Most of the moment-to-moment background gets tagged as noise and set aside. That filter is adaptive. Without it, you'd be flooded with stimuli and exhausted. But it also means that subtle phenomena that don't fit our usual categories can be discarded automatically. According to those Gnostic descriptions, and to many contemporary practitioners, that filter was, in a symbolic sense, conditioned by early cosmologies, an account in which a lesser creative force, called the demiurge in Gnostic language, sets certain limitations on perception. Again, this is a symbolic framework, not a scientific claim. The practical upshot for us is worth noting, that our perceptual system can be retrained so that the peripheral channel is allowed to report what it notices, instead of being dismissed. When you relax the dominance of narrow central focus and allow a softer, wider attention, things previously labeled as noise can come forward into notice. The practice I'll teach you is simple in principle and careful in scope. It's called the soft gaze. It does not require ritual, altered states, drugs, or isolation. It's a perceptual exercise intended to loosen the reliance on hyper-focused central vision and strengthen an open, calm awareness of the periphery. Many people report initial subtle sights within days to a couple of weeks of regular practice, but not everyone, and results are not guaranteed. If at any point the exercise produces anxiety, intense fear, or distress, stop and seek support from a trusted mental health professional. These practices are perceptual training, not therapy, and they should never replace professional care. Here's how to practice the soft gaze safely and effectively. Read through the whole set of instructions first, then try the exercise in a quiet, comfortable place where you won't be disturbed for 7 to 10 minutes. Keep your eyes open the entire time. Do not attempt this while driving, operating machinery, or in any situation where maintaining clear, detail-focused vision is required for safety. Find a place with low, neutral lighting. A dim evening room with a soft lamp or a shaded corner of a living room works well.
Avoid bright overhead lights or heavy glare. The visual field should be uncluttered. Plain walls, a simple curtain, or an open window with gentle evening light are ideal. Sit comfortably with your back supported, feet grounded, and shoulders relaxed. Your posture should be upright but not rigid. Keep your head stable. Don't rock or tilt it. Set an intention to simply notice. There's no need to wish for a vision or to expect dramatic results. The attitude is gentle curiosity. Relax your facial muscles. Let your jaw soften, unclench your teeth, and release tension around the eyes. Soften the muscles that hold your eyelids. Allow them to feel a little heavier rather than forced open. Place your gaze at a neutral point, roughly 2 to 4 feet in front of you. This could be a blank part of the wall. Now, this is the core. Don't look at anything with intent or focus. Instead, allow your gaze to flatten and broaden. Imagine your vision as a wide, translucent screen rather than a narrow flashlight beam. Your central focus will still be present at the center, but your attention spreads outward like a soft halo. This is the soft gaze. Keep your eyes open. The tendency is to move the eyes to follow something that shimmers. Intentionally resist moving your eyes. Instead, maintain head stability and let your peripheral awareness tune to subtle motion, color shifts, and changes in depth. If your attention snaps to a thought, "This is silly," or "What am I doing?" acknowledge it without judgment and let it pass, returning to the soft, open field. Practice for 7 to 10 minutes each session. Many people find that a 7-minute session is a generous entry point. 10 minutes deepens the sensitivity. Try this daily for a week of consecutive sessions to notice patterns. Some practitioners report first glimpses within a few days, others within a couple of weeks. Again, there's no guaranteed timeline. Your nervous system is unique. While practicing, watch for these likely first signals: a smoky or static-laced shimmer at the edge of your vision, a heat wave-like distortion as if light is bending, semi-transparent shapes that seem to hover, or quick arcs of movement that resolve into nothing when you look directly. Faces or silhouettes may appear briefly and then blur. Sometimes there's an electrophysical sensation like a small prickling around the crown or behind the eyes, or a sudden sense of attention being drawn to a corner of the room. These are common descriptions reported by people training their peripheral sight. A crucial and confirmatory sign many report is reactivity, and archont, if present, frequently changes behavior once it is noticed. You may observe a shape freeze, flicker, thin out, or withdraw when you maintain calm, steady visibility. This response is described not as dramatic aggression, but as a shift that indicates the dynamic has altered. Visibility interrupts the feeding the archont gets from being unseen. That's the practical purpose of learning to see, not to confront or attack, but to deprive that influence of its preferred condition, anonymity. If you do notice something, do not leap into dramatic confrontation. Do not shout, do not make grand gestures, and do not attempt to expel or command. Instead, the recommended immediate response is to maintain steady, non-reactive attention. Internally acknowledge what you perceive. A simple inner phrase like, "I see you," or "I notice you," is sufficient, said quietly and without force. This inward acknowledgement has been described by practitioners as enough to change the dynamic and protect the space. If the perception is bothersome or induces fear, gently close the session and ground yourself. Stand, take several slow breaths, and attend to physical sensations like the soles of your feet against the floor. There are ethical and safety boundaries to be honored. Some of these phenomena, if they involve other people, can indicate that a person is being influenced by something that attaches to patterns rather than being the person themselves.
You may notice that certain places, corners, mirrors, doorways, vehicles, act as anchoring points where forms tend to gather. You may also sense a repeated pattern around particular individuals, a mood swing that seems to cluster around the same person, or the recurring illusion of being watched when they are nearby. That does not justify accusing or shaming anyone. You cannot diagnose or publicly label others based on your perceptual training. Use the knowledge for protecting your own field. Clear the room with your attention, set emotional boundaries, and where needed, seek third-party help for those who are suffering. Remember that one of the primary ethical rules is compassion. Visibility should lead to clarity, not persecution. If you notice an attachment near someone you care about, the compassionate responses are private and supportive. Hold a steady, loving awareness in your own space. Offer presence and non-judgmental listening to the person. And if someone's behavior is harmful or dangerous, involve appropriate professionals. Perception is a tool for care, not accusation. A short illustrative vignette may help clarify the practice in ordinary terms. Imagine you're sitting in your living room at dusk. You've just finished dinner, and the light is soft through the curtain. You rest in a comfortable chair and allow your gaze to soften across the wall opposite you. After a few minutes, you notice a thin, smoky thread of movement near the ceiling, an arc like a small shadow sailing slowly. You do not jerk your eyes, you keep your head still and let your periphery track the movement. The thread hesitates, thins, and then dissipates like ink in water. You name it inwardly, "I see you," and continue to breathe. The heavy fatigue that arrived earlier in the evening feels lighter. That's the kind of micro-encounter many report. Subtle, manageable, and clarifying.
A common worry is whether these experiences could be a sign of a mental health issue. That is a valid and essential concern. If you are experiencing persistent visual hallucinations, intense paranoia, or worsening anxiety, especially if these began suddenly or are accompanied with sleep disruption, substance use, or other life stressors, please consult a medical or mental health professional. The soft gaze is an attention practice intended for calm exploration, not a substitute for evaluation or treatment. If the exercise produces distress, stop immediately and reach out for support. Another important boundary: do not use the soft gaze to intentionally seek contact, to attempt to summon entities, or to enter trance states. The purpose is visibility and stabilization, training your nervous system to notice without feeding fear or fascination. Similarly, avoid prolonged sensory deprivation, sleep reduction, or any use of substances to intensify perception. Those are unnecessary and risky. Gentle, consistent practice under ordinary conditions is both safer and more effective for sustained perceptual growth. You might ask, what changes when you can see these things? The immediate payoff is practical. Awareness allows you to stop unknowingly contributing energetic attention to patterns that drain or distract you. When you can perceive an anchoring point in your environment, you can act to change it, physically opening a window, shifting light, clearing clutter, or simply maintaining a calm presence that interrupts the dynamics. On a personal level, cultivating this kind of perception strengthens discernment. You become less likely to mistake involuntary emotional swells for moral failings or personal defects. You can recognize when a mood belongs to an outside pattern rather than to your core self. There are also relational implications. People who cultivate peripheral seeing often become better at holding space for others in moments of emotional intensity because they sense the fuller field of what's happening around them. The discipline of steady, non-reactive attention is a practical skill for empathy. Again, this is not about power or superiority. The goal is humble witness. When you first begin, many frustrations are normal. It takes patience to loosen the brain's habit of classifying everything as irrelevant noise. Expect your mind to produce doubts, "I'm just imagining this," and to test you with boredom or impatience. Those are opportunities to practice the same calm attention you're cultivating in perception. The discipline is less about forcing results and more about reliably showing up for the small experiment of noticing. If you're curious to extend practice beyond solo sessions, there are gentle supports that many find helpful. Keeping a brief journal after each session, noting time, lighting conditions, sensations, and any perceptions. Practicing breathing exercises that stabilize the nervous system before a soft gaze session, and meeting with a trusted mentor or small group for shared reflection, not for validation of visions, but for integrating the inner experience into everyday life. Again,
Avoid groups that encourage sensationalism or competitive displays. Look for grounded, ethics-oriented communities. A few practical tips that often accelerate comfortable learning. Try the soft gaze in the evening when sensory input is lower. Avoid screens immediately before your session, since their harsh light can lock the eyes into tight central focus. And if you're particularly anxious about what you might see, begin with shorter sessions, 3 to 5 minutes, and gradually increase as your comfort grows. It's worth returning to the texts that inspired this framing. The Nag Hammadi Library and the Gospel of Mary Magdalene offer symbolic language and practices that many contemporary seekers interpret as pointing to perceptual training. When I say, in certain Gnostic accounts, Jesus is said to have taught, I'm drawing attention to an alternative lineage that sees perception as a spiritual faculty to be refined. Whether you accept their cosmology or not, the practical technique of widening attention has been used in different traditions, from contemplative Christian practices to shamanic awareness techniques, because it's a simple way to change how the brain filters experience. A brief caution about doctrine and claims. Some viewers may hold orthodox Christian perspectives that reject Gnostic cosmologies. Others may be curious and open to alternative methods. Respect both positions. The soft gaze is a perception exercise, not a theological statement. If any language here conflicts with your faith, treat the practice as a secular attentional skill and test it by its practical results, calmer attention, greater presence, and clearer boundary sense, rather than as creed. If you're still with me, here's one last condensed version of the step-by-step soft gaze practice you can try tonight. Sit in low, neutral light, relax posture and facial muscles, keep your head still and eyes open. Allow your visual attention to widen rather than fixating. Hold the soft gaze for 7 to 10 minutes. If you notice entities or shimmer, remain calm and inwardly acknowledge, I see you. Stop immediately if you feel distressed and consult appropriate support if unusual perceptions persist. Try this daily for a week and journal what changes. A couple more examples to anchor the idea. You're in a coffee shop and feel an inexplicable tensing in your chest near a particular table.
Rather than assuming the tension is purely internal, you could practice softening your gaze and quietly noticing the field. You might perceive a faint peripheral shimmer anchored in that area, less about accusing any person and more about identifying a pattern you can avoid or adjust around. Or you're in your car and the rearview mirror bothers you with a sudden electric feeling. Soft gaze toward the back seat without staring. Often the reactivity decreases without you having to act on it. All of this leads to a simple conclusion. Visibility is power. Not the power to dominate, but the power to choose. When what was invisible becomes perceptible, you can decide how to respond. You can stop feeding patterns that exhausted you and begin to allocate attention to what supports your health and clarity. That shift, going from being unknowingly fed to choosing where your attention goes, is both humbling and empowering. If you're ready to try this practice, write visible in the comments. If you do the exercise, come back and share what you notice. Brief notes on time of day, lighting, and any sensations are most useful for building a shared understanding. For more guided material, there's a short recorded practice linked in the description that walks through a 7-minute session for beginners. If you explore it, approach gently and keep the safety guidelines in mind. Approach the opening of your perceptual field with humility and curiosity. Be compassionate toward yourself and toward others who cannot or do not wish to see what you see. Perception is a skill to be trained, not a trophy to be displayed. Take small steps, document what you notice, and prioritize emotional safety over novelty. Seeing will not suddenly solve every life problem, but it can change where you place your attention, and in that change, create room for clearer choices. If this is happening to you, you're not broken or dangerous. You're entering a different way of being conscious. Learn to hold that new sight with steadiness, kindness, and discernment. Type visible below if you're beginning the practice tonight. Be gentle with yourself and come back to share what you learn.